Good morning. I've got the kayak out today. It's the first time it's been out this year and inflated, so I'm going to do a bit of maintenance on it pre getting out on the water. It was supposed to be a really hot sunny day, so I was doing it out the front of my house because it keeps in the shade. I thoroughly cleaned it before I packed it away last winter, but I'm going to give it another wipe down, and then I'm going to give it a treatment with 303 UV protector. I tend to do this once a year, even on my old kayaks, so it's just to give it that added bit of protection against the sun during the summer. What I will also be doing is giving a frank appraisal of the kayak. I've had it just on a year now. In all fairness, obviously I've not been getting out every day. You know, there's been 2 national lockdowns, plus in one of the when we was in tier 4 in Kent, I wasn't able to travel far. So, but it has been used for at least 150 plus hours on the water, and obviously it is a year old. So I will give you my honest opinion on the kayak towards the once I've cleaned it up. Okay, so I'll get on with the cleaning and I'll get back to you later. Right, it's had a thorough wipe down now. I'm just using a cloth and warm water. I don't use any detergent to clean this. What I do tend to do is clean the kayak on site, so when I come out the water I tend to do it there and then. I've recently purchased a power station, not just for the kayak, also for my camping. I have an air tent I use as base camp before I go off hiking and wild camping. But this can be used obviously to inflate the kayak right down by the waterside, and it also can operate my 12 volt 100 watt pressure washer or power washer. It's not that powerful, so it doesn't blow the protective coating off the kayak, but it gets all the muck off on site, and then I can dry it down with a towel, and at least I know it's clean and dry and packed away, ready to go out even before I get home. So yes, just wipe down with a cloth. Just now waiting for it to dry, and then I'll start applying the 303 UV protector. While it is drying, I'll probably just get on with the review and tell you a few things about how I feel about the kayak in general. Right, well here she is, all cleaned. Just I was going to say drying in the sun, but it's overcast, but it is about 15 degrees today. Right, so as I said, I've had the kayak a year. Got quite a few hours in. I've been out mainly on flat water rivers, although I did take it out on a couple of lochs in Scotland, so it has been tested in moderate waves. In fact, it actually got quite choppy, and it just cut through the waves. So, do I like it? Yes, it was really good value for money. Like I said, you know, bought it a year ago, and I was worried. There was very few reviews. Still is now, to be honest. I did my out of the box or you know, first impression review, but it hadn't even been on the water then, so I couldn't say much about it. What are the cons? The cons are this: the drain plugs times 2. They're about as useful as making tea in a chocolate teapot, to be perfectly honest. What you'll find is if you undo them and you're trying to drain the water, you're just rocking the kayak up and down, and the water just keeps sloshing from back to front. So basically I just go back to the old-fashioned way that people do with traditional canoes, and I just turn it upside down and let the water flood out and just leave it upside down for a while before I start washing and drying it. Another con is it doesn't have side handles. Now, I know it is a 2-person kayak, and when I do go out, when there is 2 of us, we tend to sort of handle it quite well, you know, carrying it from end to end, but it still would be very handy to have some sort of carrying handle in the middle. Obviously, as you can probably see there, I have fitted a shoulder strap. It makes it a little bit easier, but it's still not very good. Right, a few questions I get asked, and one of them is how does it handle on the water? Well, over the past year, I've mainly been out on flat water rivers, the River Medway and the River Store. That's mainly because we've been in lockdown a lot of the time, and obviously I've just been sticking to local rivers. So on them it handles absolutely brilliantly. It tracks straight as a die. However, in August last year I did manage to get up to Scotland, and I got out on a few lochs, and on one occasion it was very choppy and very windy, and it tracked as straight as a die, and it just handled brilliantly. So I have absolute confidence in this. It basically tracks and it performs like a traditional canoe kayak. Another question I'm often asked is it tippy? The answer is yes. When I first got it, it was absolutely terrifying. Maybe the first 2 times out. On the 3rd time I got a bit cocky. I tried stepping in a bit quick, and I actually did end up going straight over the top of it. That was on a canoe pontoon, you know, a jetty. But that's the only time. I mean, literally by the 3rd time I was completely used to it. I will add, because people ask me, is it good for children? Now, I've taken out my grandchildren, who are 9 and 10, or 10 and 11 now, sorry. They've moved on a year. And it's not too bad with them, because obviously they do tend to sit still, and they are kayaking. They're coming out and they're paddling and they're looking around. But with young children fidgeting and moving around, you're going to have a nightmare in this if you don't end up in the drink. It's as simple as that. You're probably better off going for a traditional type kayak with the big sides. I could take the grandchildren out in that, and they can stand on the bow or the stern and literally jump off of that and climb back in without tipping it over. It's that stable. That's my Ituit 3. I still have and still use occasionally. It's great fun. This is probably, I would say, more for touring, and that's what I use it for. You know, doing 12 milers, 6 miles out, 6 miles back, or 3 hours up a loch and then 3 hours back. So it all depends on what you want the kayak for. You want a bit of fun, get the more traditional big chambered type. If you want to go touring and you want to treat it more like a traditional kayak, then you can get one of these. 2 of the main advantages of having a inflatable kayak, let alone a drop stitch kayak, are obviously storage and transportation. And the transportation is the main one with me. What I tend to do, I load this up onto my van. I have an SUV car and I have a van, but I prefer using the van as my leisure vehicle, so the kayak can go on there along with camping equipment, all sorts. I can carry everything on there. So it tends to live on my van till I get it home, clean it up and get it indoors, and then I store it in a cupboard. So they're great for that, and that's the beauty of the drop stitch version, that it is nearer the traditional hard shell kayak, but with the benefits, it's fold upable. Obviously you've got to look after it, and like I said about the washing regime and every so often protecting it, UV protecting it. I wouldn't leave it on the van during the summer. I wouldn't leave it on the van anyway in case it gets stolen, but I wouldn't leave it on the van during the summer because the temperatures in the back of the van can get up to silly degrees, and that could cause a lot of problems with the glue. Leaving it on the van in a couple of days in sub-zero temperatures in the winter wouldn't really be an issue. It doesn't affect the glue. So but it tends not to stay on the vehicle anyway, just because I just don't want it stolen or any of my goods stolen. My van is empty. Right, so I'm going to start applying the 303 now. Just basically spray it on, rub it on, and then I've got a clean microfiber cloth, and then rub it off, and that should give it a nice coat of sun protection or UV protection for at least 6 months, or I may even leave it till the end of the season again. I'll get on with that and I'll get back to you for a chat after I've done it. This 303 can be used on all sorts, obviously the PVC and the vinyl, plastic, but you don't want to overuse it. I mean, the manufacturers on some products say use it once a month. I'm not too sure. And it also depends on the climate you're in. Obviously, if you're not in a hot climate, predominantly in a hot climate, then why would you keep applying a UV coating? The Aerospace 303 protectant is actually quite expensive. It's £16 a bottle, but it does go quite a long way. And as I said, if you're only treating it once every 6 months, once a year, yeah, I mean, it lasts a long time. I've had this over a year, and there's absolutely tons in there. I've applied it in 3 sections and then wiped off. So obviously, I'm just trying to give the PVC some form of protection during the summer. It will also, obviously, prolong the life of the PVC, but it will also stop the colour fading, so which is only aesthetic. But I do like to look after the things I own. Another con of this kayak, or a kayak of this design, is it has a seam either side for 3/4 of the length of the kayak. The idea being that any water that comes over onto the deck runs either fore or aft, off of the deck, and then into 2 compartments, one at the bow and one at the stern. Obviously that's a great idea. It keeps the deck quite dry. The only problem is getting that dry. You can turn the kayak upside down, you can dry the kayak, wash it, dry the kayak down, but getting into those seams is an absolute nightmare. What I tend to do is I get my little power washer, my 100-watt power washer, and I try and blast down to make sure there's no leaves, etc. And I can't get in there to dry it out, so there is a possibility that mould could build up in there, although I tend to try and leave it out for as long as I can to get the maximum amount of water out. But it's just an annoying thing. It's an area you can't actually get to. Another big gripe I have, which I think they've alleviated now, was the bag. It's basically like an envelope bag, and to be honest, I rarely put it in the bag. I fold it loosely. I put it on my vehicle. Like I said, I use the van, and then I put a couple of large straps, cinch it up a bit, and take it indoors. So the bag's not really used. It is absolutely horrible. Although I do believe that the model they got in this year, 2021, actually comes in a good zip bag. So they've addressed that problem. So if you're buying one now, you should be okay. Right, the last thing I want to talk about is what I mentioned in the video, which is basically about a year ago, is the Skag, the 9-inch Skag that's supplied with the kayak. I tend to still use the 3-inch Skag that I talked about in the video, which is a spare Inuit Skag. It fits in the actual slot perfectly, and the pin locks it in. So I mainly use that on the rivers, because the rivers in the summer, they're not always that deep. I've had sections where I've gone through and I've only had about 4 or 5 inches underneath the craft, which is fine for the 3.5-inch Skag. The only time I've used the 9-inch was when it was choppy on one of the lochs in Scotland, because obviously I was getting a bit buffered. The other thing with the 9-inch, when I have gone out on a calm day when the water's like a mill pond, it's very, very difficult to manoeuvre, especially on your own. With a 9-inch Skag, you've really got to put a lot of work in to yawl, to go left or right. So I tend to stick with the 3-inch all the time, although I carry the 9-inch with me. So if I do have an issue and I can get out and change it, I'll change it over. So I would suggest, and as I said, the Inuit one fits absolutely perfectly, and I think they're around, I don't know how much they are now, they might be £5 or whatever from Decathlon, but it's well worth investing in one of them and carrying it with you. Right, well, I've buffed it all down now, so that's all the 303 applied, so I'm quite pleased with that. Obviously it's a good idea to inflate it before you start taking it out anyway, checking it over. Because I loosely pack it, I fold it and loosely pack it for the time I'm not using it, I don't tend to get creases in the PVC, so I don't tend to get seams. There's slight seams, but once it's inflated and left out for a little while, they tend to disappear. So it's looking in absolutely superb nick. It's been inflated now for about an hour and a half while I've been doing my maintenance on it, and it's not lost any pressure, and it can stay out a little bit longer to make sure it's fully dry. Please excuse my attire. I wasn't exactly going to dress up in front of the camera, dress up to get in front of the camera when I'm washing and polishing a kayak, so you'll have to excuse me, and please excuse the background noise. It's a bit like Piccadilly Circus around here this morning for some reason. There's road works round the corner and quite a lot of people and cars coming in and out, but I just want to get this review done. So that's basically my yearly appraisal of the kayak, and like I said, I'm still very pleased with it, and I'd love to have that other bag that the new one comes in. They haven't altered the drain off points, and like I said, they're basically, as far as I'm concerned, they're just a weak point in the kayak. I mean, some of the other kayaks have them in the actual nose cones, so you can undo a cap and tip the kayak up. I would much rather have that, but they haven't gone down that route. They haven't added side handles. Okay, you know, as I said, it's a two-person kayak, so it's not necessarily designed to be carried by one. So and with two people, it's got the two handles, one each end. It's great. Oh look, my cat's jumping into the kayak. She's got a bad leg, she's just had an operation, but so obviously the cat's coming kayaking with me when I go out tomorrow for the first time this year. Basically, I think we'll leave it there. I'm leaving it out for a little while longer. I hope you find this video of use, and if you do like it, please give it the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Right, see you on the water soon. Bye for now.